Yeah, I mean, look, the bottom line is that the military's primary function is, when necessary, to kill people and break things, right? And that may not sound very politically correct, but it is the fundamental function of what the military does. And the idea is you want to be good, so good at it and so effective at it that you don't have to do it, because everyone else just knows that if they mess around, they're going to find out. And so I hope that is the mindset change. My own son's in the military now, and he seems to feel like there's been a something of a cultural shift back to that idea of kind of a warrior.
Well, friends, welcome back to another A Life Transformed podcast. I'm John Arroyo. Today, I have the special guest. I know that every single time that I talk to you guys are like, you say that every time, but I do have the special guest. This is one of my best friends. Man, this guy is a hero to me, and I know that he's a hero to many of you guys because you guys know him. I think the world today knows him. If you are anywhere in the conservative movement, you know my guest. But more than just a guest, this guy and I we became Green Berets together, and you guys are going to actually get the backstory, because John Arroyo, back in the day before I was a Green Beret, was a green rookie kid that was just struggling. And man, I just want to tell you that I really needed a lot of help, and my friend Nick Freitas was there to help me. Welcome to the Life Transformed podcast, Nick.
Good to see you, brother, man. Great to see you as always.
Welcome to a Life Transformed podcast, Nick. Man, I'm so happy and thrilled to have you. And I'm going to tell all the stories about me. I'm not going to tell about you. I'm going to tell about me because, dude, I was a rookie. I mean, I was a truck driver trying to be Green Beret. And we'll get into it. So, Nick, welcome to a Life Transformed podcast, brother. Thank you for being on.
Oh, John, it's an honor, man. It's great to see you.
Yeah. Well, I want to set it up for people because I need to let them know where we met, because before you were this, conservative movement politician, before the world knew Nick Freitas, I knew Nick Freitas in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when we were in training to be Green Berets. And here I was, probably, I don't even know how old I was in 2003 when we met. When we met at the qualification course for the U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret training, and we were both going through their qualification course. You had already been in the military for some time. You were already Ranger qualified. I was this former truck driver trying to be a Green Beret, and you were one of my squad members during small unit tactics. Nick, yeah. I mean, dude, that was crazy.
Well, dude, you did great, man. You don't give yourself enough credit, man, because you were coming into Special Forces qualification, and phase 2 is all about, like, it's mini Ranger school. And so for those of us that had been, in infantry, like I had been an infantry squad leader, an infantry team leader, been through Ranger school. So a lot of this stuff, like, I had seen before, I had gone through before and whatnot, but you were seeing it all for the first time, man. And look, I've told my own son this, as you know, he's in the military now too. I was like, half the battle is being the sort of guy that if you don't know, other guys want to help. And John, you were always a dude that you got along with everybody. You pulled your weight. You went above and beyond. So yeah.
Well, and Nick, it was me coming into a squad of, I mean, as you said, you guys had all the experience. The majority of the team were Ranger qualified already, and it was like, I think it was myself, and there was another guy that was a rigger, and then we may have had a cook. And so it was like, is the cook, the rigger, and the truck driver going to become Green Berets with the Rangers? So what I did is I just remember just saying, hey man, I'll carry the 240. I'll be the ammo bearer.
I got you.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I just remember. But you know what? I was growing up in the military. I mean, I was growing up among, today, we're probably the same age, but man, I really looked up to you. I looked up to Lloyd. I looked up to John Fischetti. I looked up to those men today that just really, I felt like I mean, you guys really pulled me through. And so, man, I thank you so much. Thank you for who you were then, and thank you for who you are now. But Nick, before, enough about me and my exploits, truck driver to Green Beret, we want to hear your exploits. And, Nick, we know where you're at today. We hear about your background in the military, but I don't think many people actually know your background in the military. Man, tell us about how you ended up in the military, and then take us through that, all the way up to being a Green Beret.
Oh, shoot. Well, I mean, I enlisted actually originally, I should be honest. I should go all the way back to the beginning, where I really wanted to go to West Point. I remember watching, I loved watching about the Civil War when I was younger. And so I watched like the Ken Burns documentary and all the movies and read all about it. And West Point comes up a lot when discussing the Civil War. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to go to the United States Military Academy. And me and my buddy, Pat Killorn at the time, we were friends ever since elementary school. And we were both going to go to West Point together. And he did an excellent job in school, and I did other things. And he ended up getting accepted, and I didn't. And I remember it was like my first real, like, something I had worked for a few years, like 3 or 4 years, and that I had failed at. And it was just, it sucked, man. I didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling. And so I decided I was going to enlist. I didn't want to go to ROTC. I wanted to go to West Point. So I said, all right, well, I'll enlist, and then maybe I can go to the prep school. So I get into the military, and at that point I realized I want to marry my girlfriend, and there's no way I'm waiting 5 years to marry her, because you can't be married at West Point.
Right.
So there's no way I'm waiting 5 years to get married. So I ended up getting married to my wife, and I was in the 82nd Airborne Division at the time. And I remember I'd had some great opportunities. I got to go to Ranger School. I got to go to Air Assault School, EMT School, Sniper School, right? So I got to do these cool things in the 82nd. But it was a peacetime army. And I was like, well, the only kind of the only thing in town right now, the only going on is Kosovo. So I was going to re-enlist from 2nd of the 325 to go to 1st of the 325. So like literally crossing the street. And I remember my battalion sergeant major pulling him in and going, dude, I'm not letting you re-enlist to go one battalion over. We've paid for you to go to all this stuff, and you're not showing loyalty to us right now. And I remember going, well, sir, because it was my sergeant major and my battalion commander. I said, well, sir, I'm looking at the little thing we got up all in the 82nd Airborne Division, and we're supposed like kind of the loyalties and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm trying to get over to a conflict, so I don't feel like I'm being disloyal. And my sergeant major said, well, I don't care what you do, but you're not re-enlisted going one battalion over. So I was going to get out. I was going to go be a cop. My dad was LAPD. I was going to go be LAPD. And my wife and I talked about it. We were like, we didn't plan to get out of the military. We didn't save to get out of the military. So, we're like, all right, we'll re-enlist one more time. And your first re-enlistment, you know the deal. They kind of let you go wherever you want.
Yeah.
Like, okay, babe, do you want to go to Italy or Hawaii? She's like, I want to go to Hawaii. So re-enlisted for Hawaii, got over there, and 3 months later, 9/11 happened. And I was like, oh, well, I know what I'm doing now. and I figured the 25th Infantry would get deployed, so I was kind of holding on. And then I watched some of the earliest operations in Afghanistan, and two things kind of struck me. One, I lost two guys that I knew, two Rangers that I knew. One guy was Bradley Croce, who I went to infantry basic training with, and the other was Mark Anderson, who I went to Ranger School with. And that kind of hit me that these guys are in the fight, and here I am over in Hawaii. And then I saw Green Berets in Afghanistan, like the horse soldiers, the triple nickel, all those guys of 5th Group and whatnot over there doing great things. And I said, well, I want to be a Green Beret. So went to the Special Forces qualification course, found out we were having our first child, I think right after I got done with selection, either right then or right. I was on my way to Special Forces selection, or right after I got back, we found out. Lily was born in Hawaii, and then went to the Special Forces Q course, where I got to meet the famous John Arroyo. And then after that, went to 1st Special Forces Group, did a couple combat tours over in Iraq, one in 06 and one in 08. I was an 18 Bravo, which is a weapons sergeant, and then I was an 18 Fox, which is an intel sergeant. But loved being an SF. I thought SF was the best place to be in the military. There's the camaraderie there, the mission, everything. There's something really special and unique about unconventional warfare and counterinsurgency and the way ODAs operate. But I remember after my second tour, I saw how the rules of engagement were going. It was right after I was there when Obama got elected, and the rules of engagement had already been getting to a point where it felt harder and harder to actually just go do our job.
Right.
And I predicted that it was only going to get worse. And so I remember telling my sergeant major, Jerry Wynn, great guy. But Jerry looked at me and he goes, you're getting out at 11 years. What's wrong with you? Right. Like I just gotten back from Sephardic, which is, if you go to Sephardic, you got a really good chance of being on the SIF, which is what used to be called the SIF. I don't know what it's called now, but that was a great place to be in SF. And I said, I remember looking at him, I said, Jerry, you can ask my wife and family. I had 3 kids at the time. Now we all understand that we're a country at war. You can ask us to go. You can ask me to go and fight. You can't ask me to go over there, be away from my wife and kids, and not be allowed to fight. And that was a huge source of frustration for me. And I remember Jerry saying, he used some more colorful language, but he basically told me that was crap and that my job was to stay in the military, gain the rank, and then fix the problems. And I remember looking back at him and I was like, Sergeant Major, you're a sergeant major. How many problems have you been able to fix? And he looked at me and he had some more choice words to say, but he was like, yeah, you got a point. I said, the problem is guys wearing suits, not guys wearing uniforms. And so my goal was I was going to get out. I was going to do some defense contracting because what else would a former Green Beret do between that or be a police officer?
Absolutely.
And then I was going to try to get involved in a place where I could impact, defense policy, right? And ended up running for elected office instead at the state level. So I've been in the state legislature for 10 years, but that was kind of the journey through the military and the experience there. And again, it was a great experience. I met wonderful people. But that was, that's the 10,000 foot view of beginning to end in the military.
So, man, that is, everything that you're saying about what you shared with your battalion commander, everything you said about what you shared with your sergeant major from the 82nd Airborne Division, and then what you shared with your sergeant major there in group is the same thing. You're just like, hey man, I want to get in the fight. Like you were actually one that was willing to step up and speak up. And that's what we're seeing today, Nick. That's who you are today. You're a voice for the voiceless. And so even there in the 82nd Airborne Division, you're speaking up and you're like, hey man, we were told that we could be anywhere in the world 18 hours or less, right? Because I grew up in the 82nd as well. That's where I was at. And then you show up in group and you're just like, help me make sense of this. The John Arroyos that were looking to guys like you to be the voice for the voiceless, didn't really have a lot of options, didn't really have a lot of education, weren't in the intellectual field where you are, especially like me. I was just like, okay, like it'll get better, but you're like, no, help. And you're right. The rules of engagement change. Like you're sending Green Berets, Navy SEALs, whoever, into the field. And then you're telling them you're not allowed to, we're going to train you up. We're going to send you into combat and you're not allowed to do anything. And it's just like, what do you like? So really you're sending me in there and I'm possibly going to get hurt. And then I got to call you and ask you if I could shoot back after my buddy's just been shot. Like I'm good.
The part that made me mad was one, and you saw this, the Obama administration started talking about awards for valorous restraint. And it was like, are you kidding me right now? Like what sort of environment or culture are we creating in the military? And the thing that did it for me on my second tour was we had an excellent tour. The second time out, we had an excellent tour. We rolled up a lot of bad guys, and we rolled up some pretty high level bad guys. And I remember there's this one guy that we got, and the conventional battle space owner was mad because he thought we went to go get this target in his battle space without telling him that we were going to do it. In reality, we were doing what Green Berets do. We operate by, through, and with, host nation forces. So we had the unit with the Iraqi unit we were advising calls us up and says, hey, we want to run a mission, check out some caches, look for this guy. We ran it up the chain. We said, hey, this is what they want to do. They're being aggressive. This is exactly what we want. So we want to go do this operation. They said, go for it. And then all of a sudden, we show up to this place and we're just doing kind of a routine check because we knew it had been a bed down area for one of the main bad guys for the area. And then all of a sudden an explosion goes off, bullets start flying, bad guy ends up getting killed. And it's the number one target for that area. And instead of hey, great work, guys. You were out there doing Green Beret stuff, and you got a bad guy, and you didn't lose anybody. We had 2 Iraqis get wounded in the initial grenade going off, but other than that, we didn't lose any of our guys. Got the bad guy, and again, this had been a guy that there had been, I think, there had been dozens of separate independent operations launched for this guy to include Tier 1 elements, right? So there was a big deal. And the battle space owner brings me in because I had been the ground force commander for that operation because we were doing split team. We hadn't planned to go get, this high value target. We had just planned to go do operations with our Iraqis. And he calls me in, and the first word out of the S3's mouth, he goes, "Did you know?" And I even told him, I said, "Sir, I would love to tell you that it was my brilliant 18 Fox analysis." I said, "We knew that this guy had a bed down location there. We had been there before. Everybody and their brother had been there before." He's like, we knew about it too." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So everybody knew. I said, "The only thing I can tell you is that our ODA has the highest church attendance of any ODA in Special Operations Task Force North. I guess God just liked us more, right?" Like, that was it. And they literally kicked us out of battle space for the rest of our tour. And I remember thinking, are you serious right now? Like, we just got this guy. What we should be doing is rolling up everybody else within this cell. We should be looking for who's going to be next up, and we should just be keeping the pressure on until it's done. And it was like, nope. And I remember my team leader coming in going, "Hey, Nick, they don't really want us to operate in this area." I was like, "Are you what?" I said, "Okay, well, first of all, sir, fine. But the bottom line is that we'd done this operation in November. We were leaving in January, right? So we're almost done." I'm like, "Okay, fine. They don't like us, whatever. But 10th Special Forces Group is coming in, and they're going to have to deal with the aftermath of this. We need to stay engaged so that we can hand over sources and everything else." So we go, "Oh, no, just do operations somewhere else." "Oh, okay. I didn't realize we had hurt the big boy feelings of our conventional battle space owner. I didn't realize this was middle school for adults. I thought we were at war." I mean, you knew me well enough to know I was I could be a little bit sarcastic, but but I remember just thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. If we're going to get in trouble for doing our job well, I mean, we were already dealing with having to fill out 42-page PowerPoint presentations to go out on an operation. And now, like, we did our job, we did it well, and it felt like we were getting punished. And it really made me mad too, because our battalion commander, who later became, I think, a 3-star general, our battalion commander was outstanding. He was a very good battalion commander, put us on the enemy. It was wonderful. And I figured, if the commander of Special Operations Task Force North can't intervene in such a way as to keep us in the battle space because the lieutenant colonel, I think it was in the 101st, got mad, well, then what hope do we have going forward, right? If that's the new reality. So I didn't mean to go into that long rabbit trail there, but that was the frustrating point for me. And I know a lot of other guys felt it within the military generally, and specifically within special operations, because the whole point of special operations is go to an environment where you are trusted to conduct complex and dangerous military operations without having to ask permission every 5 seconds. And it was frustrating.
Nick, everything you're saying is just so, like, profound, because I think you're actually putting language to what so many guys have felt, but a lot of guys didn't have enough guts, or maybe they were just like, "Hey, my security is the military. 11 years, man. I got to stick around because, how else am I going to feed my family unless I'm going to go be a Dynacorps, Blackwater. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to be away from my family." And then you really don't have anything. Then you're really begging for battle space, and you're really begging for everything else. And so, man, again, going back to being the voice for the voiceless, I mean, you're saying things I guarantee you, when our brothers watch this podcast or watch this show, they're going to say, "Dude, everything, that's exactly what we went through." And my hope today is that our brothers don't have to deal with that today. Obviously, we know that they're not at war, but that they actually are empowered to go and do their job, and they're not punished for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is definitely the hope. And I do think there does appear to be a mindset change. We're no longer the Department of Defense, we're the War Department, and it's the whole idea of I expect you to be fit, I expect you to be, look, the bottom line is that the military's primary function is, when necessary, to kill people and break things, right? And that may not sound very politically correct, but it is the fundamental function of what the military does. And the idea is you want to be so good at it and so effective at it that you don't have to do it, because everyone else just knows that if they mess around, they're going to find out. And so I hope that is the mindset change. My own son's in the military now, and he seems to feel like there's been a something of a cultural shift back to that idea of a kind of a warrior ethos. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly where I was going to go. But before we get to your son and him enlisting and kind of following in your footsteps, how was it coming home? How was your reintegration from maybe those frustrations? Now you're having babies, how was that with you and your wife? How did that work out for you?
I have to say, I know a lot of guys that had a tough time of it coming back. Two things. One, I like to be very, very honest that there's this impression that people have in their minds where if you're overseas in a combat situation in your SF or your special ops, you must have just been in gunfights 24/7. That was not my experience. I know some guys that had experiences that were far close. My experience was we did a lot of ops. We went out on a lot of things. We rolled up some bad guys, but the vast majority of the bad guys that we got, as soon as we showed up at 2:00 in the morning with guns in your face, I surrender. That was the thing. They were not looking. They were not liking to get into firefights with us, and it was probably a better decision for their longevity. But that was my experience. So there's only really one time where I thought, "Holy crap, I'm about to die." So it's not like I was dealing with a bunch of deep-seated trauma of having lost a lot of guys on the team. I had a good buddy of mine. They lost 2 guys on 2 separate tours on his ODA, and both guys had listed him as the one they wanted to return the remains back to the family. And he had a really tough time with that, as you can imagine, as I think any of us would have, to not only lose your friend, but then be the guy that is going to bring those remains back and talk to the wife and the kids or the family. And so I never want to make out like I went through more or endured more than I actually did. The other thing too that I had that was just the most incredible thing imaginable was I had a godly wife. And what I mean by that is when I was deployed, first time I was deployed, we had our oldest daughter, Lily, and my son, Luke, had been born in September, and we left in January, I think, for the deployment. And then the second time around, we had my youngest daughter, Allie, and I deployed in, I think it was May. We had her in December. I deployed in May. So I missed a lot of times with the kids when they were really little. My wife, who never signed up to be a single parent, effectively had to be. But she never acted like I was doing something wrong or giving her a burden because I was deployed. And she never complained about me being gone in front of the kids. Her attitude was, Daddy loves you and Daddy wish he could be here, but Daddy has an important job. He is protecting us. He is protecting our country. And while Daddy's serving overseas, we're serving at home by praying for him and by sending him letters and by, calling him when we can and all of those things. And then when I got home, my wife meets me at the airport and looking smoking hot too, but meets me at the airport and just and so happy to have me home. My kids are happy to have me home, even though my youngest kid, my son, kind of looked at me like, I recognize you, kinda, right?
Yeah.
And same thing with my youngest daughter. But because she had done such a good job of keeping my memory in the forefront with them, they saw Daddy coming home as a hero, not some stranger that had abandoned them for 9 months. And I can't emphasize this enough. And I know there's going to be a lot of guys like, Nick, you got really lucky. And all I can say is it wasn't luck. It wasn't luck. It was the fact that I have a wife that just really took seriously her responsibility as a Bible believing, praying wife and mother. And the result was the integration became a lot easier. There were still things we had to work through, right? I remember my mom came up to see me when I first got home. And so my wife and my kids are in the car. This is in 2006. And we're driving up to Seattle for something because I was stationed at Lewis. And this guy kind of cuts me off on the road And instead of doing the typical, like, oh, what a jerk, like just snapped back. And it was almost like I was in Iraq again. And I remember like whatever came out of my mouth, it wasn't good. And like for some reason we were on this little side road and I like stopped the car and was going to get out. And Tina was like, babe, what are you doing? And I was like, he cut me off. Like and it was that, because that mentality in Iraq, where if you're driving around the Humvee, you rule the roads, man. Anybody that's not, getting out of the way or whatnot is a potential threat. And I remember it was real brief and it wasn't significant or traumatic, but it was this really brief episode where my mom and my wife are both looking at me like, the heck's wrong with you, man? I'm like, oh, sorry, that would have got you killed like 4 weeks ago, right? That would have been my response. Would have not been to yell at the guy. My response would have been 50 cal rounds. And but so there was things like that were part of the transition back, and there was getting used to when something happens, your immediate response is not looking for violence, right? But again, I was very, very blessed to have an incredibly supportive wife that made that transition very easy.
Nick, I think you're saying something that, the prayer. Like today I'm a man of faith. I know that you're a man of faith. But back then I don't even know if I wasn't even a closet Christian. I was told that I was a man of faith just, when I was a young boy, but I wasn't living for it. I wasn't living with it. I was living in the world. And you see your reintegration and my reintegration was two separate reintegrations. Again, here was this young truck driver showed up on a Green Beret team, and I walked around timid, and you can't walk around timid. They just tore me apart. They just, blood was in the water and the sharks just came and just tore me apart. They just pulled out the vulnerability. So what I did is when I came home, I gave myself into alcohol. And then I took all those insecurities and I brought them home. And then I wouldn't say that like I wasn't a bad guy. I didn't beat on my family. But when I would drink, that would come out. And I didn't see heavy combat like you. There's a lot of times people are like, oh, you're a Green Beret. Like, dude, you must dude, how many people you killed? I'm like, none that I know of. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to, that I'm not your hero anymore after I tell you this. I know that you watched a lot of movies and they're mostly about Navy SEALs that write books. Like, it's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. My fictional book is coming out. I'm going to tell you it's a tell all. But anyways, with all that being said, what I really brought home was just this orphan boy. That's what I brought home. A young boy that was an orphan, and my wife and I didn't find faith until later. We had to hit rock bottom. And so I just say that because it's a vast difference of what you're saying. And you said it. Your wife was very intentional, which is why your recovery and your reintegration was intentional. And I think that is so significant. And I think that's what people need to hear today, because I just recently wrote a curriculum, and I'm just going to kind of share this right now. I wrote a curriculum, and it's called Finding Resilience in Today's World, Being Intentional About Self-Care. But in this curriculum, I identified 8 self-care steps. And I use self-care because that's military language and lingo. Some other places, it's life skills. So, if you're talking to a group of kids, then you would say, hey, these are life skill steps. But one of the things that God showed me is these are the steps from when I was shot at Fort Hood to how I'm here encouraging you or, talking to people. And one of the, step number 1 is identifying your source of resilience. So, when we get broken, we come back from deployments, we have to figure out, we have to identify what are we going to grab onto? Well, for you, like you said, your wife had her faith. And so for obviously that sounds like you also had faith. For me, I didn't. I grabbed onto Bud Light. Bud Light was my source of resilience. That was my inner strength when I didn't know my identity, when I didn't know who I was, when life smacked me in the face. It was easy because, when we were in the 82nd Airborne Division, we were told we were the most physically fit alcoholics.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was not all American. It was airborne alcoholics. Yeah.
So, I say all that to say this. In the curriculum, one of the things that I share is the Army has the health to fitness program. and the Air Force has the comprehensive soldier fitness program. There's 4 steps. And pretty much what they're saying is, hey, these are 4, whether it's the Air Force or the Army, it's 4 domain or 5 domains. And pretty much if you have these domains in your life, then you're a well-rounded, fit to fight day and night soldier, ready to go. You are resilient. And those domains are sleep, nutrition, spiritual, physical, and I think there's one other. But never in my career did anyone ever tell me that there was a spiritual domain to the readiness of a soldier. Like everything I ever heard and every training that I ever went through was, hey man, if you're good, if you're healthy, then you have the grit. So pretty much it was about grit. Grit is what gets you through. Well, grit is not a source of resilience. Grit is just like, okay, I can be a Green Beret and I can push through hard things, right? Because I have heart. So what I did is I took that health to fitness program. I took their language. I pretty much took their verbiage right out of their book. This is what the Army says. And the Army says this. The Army says, based on their spiritual readiness domain, it is the component that gets you through during stress, tragedy, and hardship. And I was like, hold on, you're telling me the spiritual component is the thing that gets you through stress, tragedy, and hardship? So what you just said, Nick, is that you came back from combat. Your wife, her component was the spiritual component, and her component was Jesus Christ. That was her source of resilience. And so she prayed, and when things got hard, she was praying for you. Well, that makes all the difference. That tells me that during stress, tragedy, and hardship, that's what got you guys through. And man, I absolutely, now I'm like, oh my goodness. So here's what I believe. For so many years, Nick, we have been putting the wrong source in the wrong component. It's almost like an aircraft. If you put engine oil in the hydraulic pump, then you're putting the wrong fluid and you're wondering why it's deadlined. And so now I'm kind of going to the soldiers and I'm talking to the leaders and I'm saying, did you know in your language right here from your health to fitness program, it says the spiritual component, the spiritual domain is what gets you through during stress, tragedy, and hardship. Oh my goodness. Like you've been putting engine oil in the hydraulic pump and wondering why your equipment's deadlined.
No, I think it's true. And the other thing too, because anybody that would know, anybody that knew me in the 82nd or the 25th, or even my earlier days in SF or whatnot would be like, okay, yeah, Nick might have claimed to be a Christian, but he could drink with the rest of us. And he would, there were certain things I avoided and I wouldn't do. Like, I was very loyal to my wife. But that didn't mean that I wasn't using all the bad language, saying all the bad jokes, going to the bar with the guys. Like there was all sorts of things like that were just not reflective of, my faith. And that's not to say a Christian can't have a drink with his buddies, right? But it was one of those things where, again, in a lot of my words and actions, you would have never known I was a Christian. And it wasn't until a little bit later on in my life in SF where it started to take more shape, in part because I met other Green Berets that I respected as Christians. And this is important because I think one of the tragedies that we kind of have within the Western church right now is a lack of masculinity. And what was amazing to me was meeting guys that I knew that were good operators. They could handle themselves in a fight, right? The whole deal. And they were good men of God. And it was like, okay, I want to be like that. Like, this is not an either or proposition where I can either be a warrior or a good Christian. To be one is, to be the other. To be a good Christian means to be capable of being able to protect and provide. And one of the things that I like to point out is that it is a huge testament in my mind to, God's mercy, that he really rewards imperfect attempts at faithfulness. And so I'm very, very grateful for that, because if I was being held to the standard that is Christianity, I failed horribly. And yet he still blessed these attempts, these imperfect attempts. And you said something important there about the spiritual component, because this is the other thing too. people ask me, you got out for 11 years. Do you regret anything? I said, well, I would have liked to have been a team sergeant in combat. Like that, to me, that would have been the pinnacle of my SF career, is being a team sergeant in combat. I never got that opportunity because I left right before I would have got my team sergeant time. And, but it didn't crush me. A lot of guys get out of the military and all of a sudden there's this loss of meaning, purpose, and community. Because say what you want about the military, you're never really in doubt of your meaning, purpose, and community. And, but because even though I did such a bad job of doing it, because my identity was fundamentally in Christ and I was who Christ said I was, I never dealt with this identity issue either in the military or out of the military. Same thing with kind of in the political realm. Men have a tendency to associate our identity with what we do and how we provide and things of that nature. And those are important. Those are important aspects to who we are, but they're not who we are. And I think there's something very important about understanding, and I don't just mean spiritual and the, anything goes. No, I mean my identity is in Christ. And so regardless of what the hardship is, whether things are good or things are bad, that's my identity. And so I'm never in question about my meaning or my purpose. Why am I here? What am I doing? I never wonder about that. I may have some confusion about what I should do next on a particular issue or mission or job or whatever else it is, but I never wonder about the fundamental purpose or meaning for my life. And when you have that and you are confident in it, then when bad things happen, I think your ability to explain and navigate and use them for something good or for something useful is just increased exponentially. And so I do think it's something where the most important fundamental question that you will ever ask in your life, period, is what do you think about God? And because even if you decide there is no God, okay, well, that has implications. That has implications for what you think about truth, what you think about morality, what you think about, reason and science and everything else. And so getting that question right is so important because it will form the foundation of your worldview. And what I would say, and again, I don't say this trying to sound preachy, it's more of just been my experience of the last 46 years, 26 years of marriage, is putting my identity in Christ has never once steered me wrong. A lot of other things have steered me wrong, but that has never once steered me wrong.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And Nick, wow, you put so much language to so many things that right now God is sending me, right? My story. I was shot at Fort Hood. I was left on the ground for dead just 6 months before my wife lost both her parents 9 days apart. And so God now sends me all over the world, just like he's using you. And it seems like he's sending me to some of the most critical places. Like just recently, I was at Fort Stewart, Georgia, that had the recent active shooter event. And then I end up at the actual unit that had the shooter event. And I was scheduled to go there a month before the shooting. I mean, like that is divine. And then I end up at Tinker Air Force Base. And when I get to Tinker Air Force Base, I meet with several wing commanders. And then they tell me that Tinker Air Force Base leads the Air Force in suicides. And I'm like, okay, Lord. So I was a Green Beret for you in uniform. Now you're sending me all over the world to free the oppressed. And what I'm doing is exactly what you just said. Now I'm going in there. And because I'm going into a secular environment, I have to use their language and I have to talk to them in ways that they understand. I have to use words that work, right? And so I'm bringing the 8 steps of self-care and I'm sharing it with them, and I'm talking about resilience. I'm talking about identifying your source of resilience, slowing down, facing your fear and your pain, and I'm going through the 8 self-care steps. And I tell you what, but the very first and the foundational point is exactly, hey, look, your health to fitness program says this. And do you know that your health to fitness program actually says that the spiritual component is the thing that gets you through during stress, tragedy, and hardship? Do you know that? Like, hey, all I did is I just became a good soldier. I just followed what you guys have been telling me for years. And have you guys figured something out? Why is my recovery so much more different than yours? I think we got a guest coming on right now. Is he there?
Oh, you got to be kidding me. Johnny Fischetti.
Hey,
What's up, brother?
how's it going, man? I haven't seen you in a long time.
I haven't seen you in a long time. So now you brought the cool Green Beret on.
Oh man. Hey, I brought the 7 Special Forces Group guy on, and so hey everybody, here on the Life Transform.
And stuff. So I brought this.
And now he's going to do the rest of the episode in John Fischetti's version of Spanish, which John Fischetti was the first guy to teach me that, Nick, speaking Spanish is easy. You just got to know one thing, and that's por supuesto. So when anybody says anything, you go, por supuesto.
I speak as much Spanish as John at this point.
Hey.
I asked him, I was like, why are you going to third group? And he goes, dude, I'm from LA. I don't speak Spanish.
I'm a California Mexican, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, welcome here on the Life Transform podcast. We just brought on our good friend, John Fischetti. John Fischetti is probably one of Nick's best friends, and these were the 2 guys that helped me become a Green Beret. And these guys are absolute best friends. John Fischetti is a retired 7th Special Forces Group Sergeant Major. And so now, friends, you have 3 Green Berets talking about what it's like going through the military. You guys heard from Nick, but I wanted to bring John on because this is a big deal for Nick.
Oh no, I really appreciate it because I haven't seen John in a while. And again, when you talk about the Green Berets that saw the firefights and stuff like that, John Fischetti is one of them. But yeah, John and I, all through the Q course, man.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going through some pictures the other day, and I found a video when we were trying to learn weapons together, and you did those videos, and I was recording, and you were disassembling them and stuff. It was so funny. I showed my sons, and they were like, "That's you? You guys? What? You couldn't figure out how to take apart a pistol?" I was like, "There's a lot different time." Okay?
Yeah. Just because we've taught you kids how to do it since you were 6 doesn't mean that. Yeah.
Hey, John.
There's a lot of guns on the test.
Yeah.
Hey, John. With Nick's influence, you could probably make some money on those videos these days. I'm just telling you. Like,
Sure. Probably more like blackmail, Philip. And him screwing up, trying to talk through it.
So one of the things that John, I wanted you to come on. Nick, you're here. I really wanted to talk with you, Nick, but it just hit my heart to bring John on. And I think this is a perfect time to talk about the suicide epidemic in the military, active duty, and the veteran community. John, you just retired 7th Special Forces Group. Nick, you're on the ground as a conservative leader, also working in our political field. And you hear about it, you're trying to make reforms. John, what are you seeing, and what do you think? Is there any one thing that we can pinpoint to say this is it? When I speak with these commanders and I go all over, they're hemorrhaging. They have no clue. And Nick and I just got done talking about what we know is the source. I know, John, that you're now a man of Christ as well. But man, from your experience, 7th Special Forces Group, or being a sergeant major, what are you seeing on the ground?
Well, I will tell you, so that was a huge issue that we had going through, tons of combat, but also just dealing with the home life. We had a lot of people that were trying to change the culture where it's not a stickler for there to be, a guy going to mental health, trying to get the leaders to accept going to mental health is okay. But there's a lot of things that are, still bothering guys that they don't want to talk about. Like my personal journey was, if I would have got therapy and got help back when I was in E7, it would have made me a better team sergeant and a better operator. But yet the stickler was, if you did, you would lose so much. And we tried to change that culture. And I find that a lot of times everything comes down to just resources. And, one of my biggest complaints while I was in was they made God a 4-letter word. And, they sat there and, never really pushed the chaplains on guys, never really pushed them toward that, because a lot of the leadership, I don't know if they were just taught this or what, but if they had some type of religious view, then it made them biased toward that. And so they just left out religion altogether. And a lot of times guys just needed somebody to talk to. They didn't care if it was what type of chaplain it was. They just needed somebody to talk to. The other thing that I found while we were in was the resources. Once people started going to see therapy, then there wasn't enough of it. I got stationed back up at Fort Bragg for a little bit, and I got thrown in with they called it cookie cutter medicine. And here I am I've been through a lot of combat. I need to go talk to somebody, and they stuck me in group therapy with a bunch of privates. I probably don't need to be in group therapy with a bunch of privates. And it comes down to a lot of that too. And to separate that too is special forces and special operators, they need special therapy. And that's not available to a lot of places. We do have P3 and we do have stuff while you're active duty, but then once you get out of the VA is designed to take care of 95% of the veterans that are out there. Unfortunately, the other 5% that saw some really horrific things, it's hard to get a therapist who's qualified to even understand what you went through. The first therapist they gave me when I got out, she said I was her first combat veteran she's ever worked with. And, I told her like a PG-13 story and it freaked her out, and she was like, oh, I don't know. And we started talking about relationships and stuff because she didn't want to touch any of that anymore. So I had to go back into the system and try to find somebody who could help me. And that's me coming in with somebody who has influence and connections. Now this guy who is an E4 who got out and he's suffering from stuff, how's he going to be able to get somebody different? So I find that on the active duty side, it comes down to resources where there's just not enough to get guys in there and there's not enough push for it. And then I find on the veteran side, there's just not enough specialized care for that. And, you find these guys that go out there and, they move off to somewhere that's away from veteran networks. And then they find themselves out there in the woods somewhere, with their hunting dogs, and they're just sitting out there, and that's not a good place for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Nick, what's your take on the suicide epidemic and everything that John's saying?
I think, one of the things that we looked at on the policy front is, so I was the co-chair of the Military and Veterans Caucus for the Virginia General Assembly, and my Senate co-chair was Bryce Reeves. And he wasn't a combat vet, but he had been infantry, Ranger School guy, and then been a police officer, been a narcotics cop. And so he understood it very well and was very, very passionate about it. And we'd constantly have people coming in, briefing us on different programs and what they were doing. And I remember one of the things that I looked at, and I remember telling this to a couple different groups that came in and talked to us. I said, look, let's get one thing straight. The moment you start treating combat vets like they're victims, you're going to lose them. They don't want to show up being treated like they're coming from the island of, misfit toys. They're not victims. They went overseas. They did difficult things in service to country, and they deserve to be treated with the respect of who they are. And who they are is not the traumatic things they went through, but that's coloring the way that they're viewing things right now. And it was interesting because one of the programs that I heard about that we tried to get some traction on in Virginia that made the most sense to me was he was talking about it for first responders, but he had said that it was something the SEALs were doing, and I don't know, like everybody that always comes and talks to us says it's something the SEALs are doing, but he said that what they were trying to do was they had learned that when they were talking about different mechanisms that they use to deal with stress, if they advertised them as this is going to help you deal with stress, nobody was interested. But if they took guys to the range and they took them through high stress environments and your shot group starts to, not get as tight, and then they said, okay, now we're going to teach you ways to actually calm yourself, lower your heart rate, deal with the stress in the environment to make you a better operator. All of a sudden, they are laser focused, paying attention on what makes me a better operator. And then after the fact, it was like, And this also will help as you're reintegrating with your family, or you're dealing with the stress of your kids screaming while you're doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, so these skill sets, they put it in a mindset where a man doesn't want to be told I'm broken. He doesn't want to be told that I'm dealing with, he wants to optimize. He wants to be a better man, a better operator, a better husband, a better father. And as soon as they started changing that mind shift, they started seeing more results with the guys that they're reaching out to. And I think there's something informative about that, about the way God made us as men, where we want to be providers, we want to be protectors. And sometimes what that means is you're going to be thrown into dangerous situations that can impact you significantly. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important that we understand something, and this is hard to do for secular medicine because they just want to treat us like we're all a random collocation of atoms that just happen to come up out of the primordial goo, and we're not. We're human beings, we're men created in the image of God for a particular purpose. And the biggest thing I saw with all of my friends that were really dealing with issues that might have cost them their families or whatnot, it was trying to once again reclaim that sense of identity, purpose, and meaning. And this is why I think that every solution that you try that operates apart from Christ feels like a Band-Aid to me. Because if I can't answer that fundamental question of who you are, why you exist, what's your meaning, what's your purpose, then we end up with guys where they go to therapy for people that are totally unqualified to either understand what they went through, like John's experience, or they're offering solutions and techniques which make us feel weak. And we don't want to feel weak. We want to feel strong again. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think there's good ways to go about this and bad ways, and it's definitely true that there's more resources needed. Another problem that we're going to have to face within the military community, and this goes back to what John was, John didn't say this specifically, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but how do I say this? There's no way to say it. A lot of things with the VA have become a grift. It has become a way to entice guys to get. Here's what ends up happening. The guys that really need the help don't want to take it. But then there's another category of veteran, and we need to call this out as veterans. There's another category of veteran who didn't do anything difficult, and yet they're getting 100% disability. And it's like those resources are not endless, people. We do not have an endless supply of resources. If you're taking resources for stuff that you shouldn't be, if you got legitimate stuff that happened, dude, you are entitled to that and you should take it because that is part of your benefits. But we got other people that are gaming the system and they don't realize that they're hurting their brothers. And then we got other guys who should be taking advantage of these things that are available. It is for them. And they need to do it, if not for themselves, they need to do it for their families. They need to do it for their wives. They need to do it for their kids. And they're sitting here going, and this is what every single one of them does. Yeah, it was bad, but my buddy so-and-so had it worse. And man, if you went through this stuff is here for you. By the same token, if you didn't go through this stuff, it isn't there for you. And that's the part that pisses people off when I say it. But having spent 10 years now on the policy side of this and watching the gaming of the system, people need to recognize that it's like anything else. Part of your honor in serving is not only wearing the uniform and being a good soldier, it's also about when it comes later on to decisions you're going to make, you should be taking the resources that you are entitled to in order to take care of yourself and your family. But do not game the system because you just look at it as a free paycheck. And that has become a problem.
Wow, man, dropping knowledge. Because everything both of you guys are saying is right on. John, you're talking about it from the ground. Nick, you're talking about it from the policy side, and it's it. One of the, going back to, and both of you guys know what I've been through. John Fischetti, you know as well. Nick, one of the things that I'm trying to share with these commanders is I'll show a picture of myself, to them, and I call it a life transformed, and it's gangs, war, wounded, redeemed. I show that I literally I don't just tell them, I show them how I've transformed and how God has transformed my life. And there is no healing, there is no transformation outside of Jesus. And Jesus is, or your faith, but Jesus is you can get better, but like you said, it's just a Band-Aid. But outside of Jesus, you're not getting better. you're just putting a Band-Aid on it. And I show them, look, guys, I don't take medication. I've actually been healed of PTSD. I've been through all this stuff. And so that's why I was just kind of sharing on that curriculum on what I'm doing and using their language as self-care steps. Because just like you said, Nick, I can't go in there. I have to be able to share it in a way of, hey man, this will make you better. But here's one of the things you're going to have to do. As a Green Beret, you got to face your fear and your pain. Nobody wants to face their fear and their pain. Nobody wants to forgive the people that have hurt them, because here's the other thing that's happening. A lot of soldiers in uniform, whether special operators or whether it's combat, not every wound that we're carrying happened in combat. There's so many people that are carrying mommy daddy issues, mommy daddy wounds. They were sexualized, things that happened when they were young. And when you get broken, what they don't understand is everything you never dealt with comes to the surface. And so, yes, you're dealing with maybe combat, or maybe you're dealing with your wife cheating on you while you're on deployment, or maybe you're no longer the Green Beret you once were because you can't be on a team, or you're at 19 years and man, you're losing your identity. But a lot of that goes back to you didn't have a dad. And that's a lot. John, you want to comment on any of that stuff?
Well, I'd like to say that I agree with you. A lot of that does come down to, finding what's right for you. And Nick had mentioned earlier about finding all these things. I went to every program that I could, and all of it made sense. But until I found Jesus, until I put that in there, that's what actually clicked everything for me. And then I was able to do those things. And then, as we start moving through and you start looking at what your real issues are, once you start going through this therapy and you realize, well, wait a minute, there's more than that. Because the one thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about is the moral injury that we got while we were in combat. When you're out there and you don't realize that you have these issues from childhood, but now you're asking this commander to come help you, or this commander to support you, or commander to protect you, and then they don't. And then it's more devastating than you realize because of a childhood trauma that you had. And now you're dealing with that commander's moral injury that you had, when reality is you're dealing with the fact that, your father wasn't there for you, or somebody in your life wasn't there for you. So it does come down to, dealing with past traumas, but you can't deal with that until you can get at least in front of somebody who can help you. Because one of the biggest things that I found with trauma and dealing with therapists is the fact that a lot of people can come help you unpack the box, but it takes a professional to show you where to put the things that are in the box. And that right there is where I need it. And sometimes it's a therapist, and sometimes it's our Father. If it's a spiritual thing, he'll show you where it needs to go. But if it's a mental thing, you need a professional to show you where to put that. And I've come a long way. I've had 8 years of pretty solid therapy. And 8 years ago, when I was standing there in a hospital getting treatment, one of our good friends, he wound up starting his nonprofit and all that, but we were sitting there talking to each other, and we'd already been through lots of therapy. And he looked at me and he goes, no chaplain, nobody came in here and talked to us about God or anything. And I was like, yeah, come to think of it. And that's when it started clicking for me. We started having a little Bible study. We started having something together. And then all of a sudden he gets out, starts this beautiful nonprofit that's doing amazing things. And it's exactly what I believe that people need, is they need to come together, not be afraid to talk about Jesus, not be afraid to talk about God, because that is the connector. You can learn all these cool techniques about down regulating and all that, but until you have that purpose, until you know that you're in that light, or where you're going to get into that light, you'll never be able to put it together.
Yeah, I will see. Go ahead,
John,
Nick.
real quick on that, because both of you guys are operating in this field right now, and it's one of those things that has been desperately needed. Because as I said earlier, the thing that got me back in touch with my faith was not somebody that made a really good argument for Christianity. I already believed that. The thing that got me in touch with my faith is I saw men I respected who were men of God, and who had been through some stuff and had their stuff together. it was one of those things where I remember telling my son before he went off to infantry basic, I said, "Hey, bud, here's the deal. You're gonna interact with a lot of people that don't share your faith, don't share your values, don't share your morals, and they're gonna be your teammates." I said, "You can do one of two things. You can call them out every time they do something you don't like, or you can be the best soldier you can possibly be and live differently, and they'll ask you." And one of the things I'm so grateful about what you're doing, John, and what you're doing, John,
Fish and John.
Yeah, it is because what it really comes down to is, especially right now, there's a crisis among, I think, men in general, and they don't want to hear. They want to hear from a man they respect as being a man, and you guys have all those credentials. You have all the credentials. Like there's nobody meets you guys that doesn't doubt, like, yeah, that dude's a man. And so you can speak with a certain authority on this, because what John said about this whole idea, or what Fish said about this whole idea of like not being afraid to talk about Jesus. There's been almost this idea that this is like this woo-woo, kind of soft Christian-y thing. It's like, no. The name Jesus is powerful. And it should inspire powerful men to speak it with boldness. And when powerful men who have demonstrated those things, who have been through difficulties and hardships and combat and everything else entitled in that, or entailed in that, show up and speak that name, it breeds courage in others to do the same. And there's been such a deficit of it all my life. And now for the first time, I'm looking around and I'm seeing guys like John Fischetti and John Arroyo and John Lovell, let's throw another John in there, and like Victor Marks and Chad Robichaud and Chad Wright. And I'm watching all these guys like, this is what gives me hope for the future, is when I see these men who are bold men of war, stepping forward going, no, I claim Jesus Christ. And I genuinely believe it is a game changer culturally, not just within the military, but within our country right now.
Yeah, Nick, John, everything you guys are saying, that's it. Because I've recognized as I have been stepping out and been bold. And again, I'm not pushing things down people's throat. I just tell my story. And my story is I was bleeding out on the ground and I audibly heard Jesus tell me to get up. Man, I'd give credit to anybody who would have picked me up, but they weren't there. And so why has my recovery been so much different? As I said earlier, it's because I made Jesus a source of my resilience. And then, as John Fischetti just said, hey, then he put me in the hands of the counselors, the orthopedic surgeons, and the chaplains and the pastors and everything else. But at the core foundation, he was it. And so that's it. You're right, Nick. People just need to see a man step up. And here's the thing. We are going from, as you said it earlier, talking about Kosovo in the 82nd Airborne Division, we need to go from a mindset of peacetime to wartime, which is why, right, when we now have the War Department, that's where men in the body of Christ need to stand up and be like, oh, well, my faith stays at church. It stays in this building from on Wednesdays and Sundays. No. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I am called. As a matter of fact, Jesus said in Luke 4:18, he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to free the oppressed. You know what he said? He said, De oppresso liber. He said, my mission, when Jesus in Luke 4:18 speaks, he's speaking his mission statement. And he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to preach the gospel, heal the brokenhearted, set the captives free, set at liberty those who are oppressed. And so what he has told me and what he's telling you and he's telling every other man is I'm looking for a bunch of Green Berets, not a bunch of sissies, a bunch of warriors who are willing to stand up and proclaim the gospel in front of the world, like Charlie Kirk's, like Nick Freitas is. I need them out there. I need bold men to raise up strong sons and daughters that will stand up and not try to build their own kingdoms. Well,
Iron sharpens iron, my friend.
Come on. Well, John, man, thank you for jumping on, and we're going to wrap up now. But, man, John, thank you so much for surprising Nick. I knew that he was going to be blown away.
Oh, as soon as I saw him come up there, I was like, oh, man, they got fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Nick, now you know why my team was kind of struggling a little bit. Go ahead, John. You were going to say something?
Well, I've been listening to Nick talk and so forth, and I just want to point out something that I wanted to make sure I went to the gym first to get buffed up a little bit. You had mentioned one time in this thing that you were like, "Hey, yeah, I realized people were calling me this Green Beret, but that didn't look like it, so I had to get back in the gym." And I'm like, "Oh man, so I can't be that big fat retired guy right now."
You're looking good, Fish. You're looking good.
Give it a couple of years. I'm working.
No, I really, John, I really am grateful. I love seeing you, and it's great to see Fish again because it is. It's been a while since we've talked. This is another thing about the SF community too that I've always loved is you won't talk to a guy or see a guy for years, and then when you do, it's like time never, time never went forward. Yeah,
exactly.
Brothers, I first of all, I love you guys. I'm a Green Beret because you guys were men in front of me, even though we were the same age. And Fischetti, I just remember you telling stories about your dad. You know what I mean? Like, hey, my dad went to a bar and punched people in the face and said, "My son's a ranger. He'll kick your butt." Oh, yeah. I still remember that story, like.
Don't wear a ranger shirt unless you are one. I'll tell you, my dad will call you out. And he was doing stolen valor before it was a good thing to do.
Before it was popular.
Yeah, before it was popular. He's fighting it the whole time.
But I love you guys. Hey, Nick, man, the world celebrates you. I get text messages from some of my friends, and they're just like, do you know this Green Beret? Like, do you see what he's saying? Like, because, Nick, you're saying everything that every other man wish that they could say. You just went out and said it, bro. You're saying it, and the world is supporting you.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Look, the toughest lesson I've learned, and when I say toughest, I mean I've learned it the hard way, is my job was. I always thought my job was to find a noble mission, and then ask God to join me on it. And I've really learned that the actual mission is to find out what God's doing and join Him. And so, we don't like the word obedience. I think in America we associate it with servitude or whatnot. But I really do believe that just earnestly seeking out obedience to God and asking for clarity. I have never gotten so much. I don't know. I've never gotten so much joy and peace from the things that I'm supposed to do, regardless of the circumstances, is when I feel confident that I'm being obedient to what He has me doing. And I just want people to understand that that's as real as I can convey it. But yeah.
Man, I appreciate that. Hey, Nick, also, if Fish and I could ever support you at an event, or if you're doing something, absolutely, and you want some guys there that speak the same language, saying the same things, bunch of Green Beret, because here's one of the things: people don't believe that tough guys can be men of God. Green Berets are men of God. You don't really see that much. You don't see a lot of special operators out there sharing their faith. I think I started sharing my faith openly on social media, and now I'm starting to see some of my other peers in the military starting to step up. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of it is because they were ashamed. They were closet Christians, and then, they didn't want you. So, but if there's anything I could ever do to support you, Nick, in any way, man, I'll jump on an airplane. Fish and I will carry your bags, bro, whatever we need to do.
Yeah,
Fish is like, don't volunteer me for that.
No, yeah. You need a really bad translator down there.
I know, he just kept saying por supuesto with confidence.
Yeah. Es necesito por burrito.
All right, brothers.
Look, I feel the same way about you guys. If there's anything I can ever do to help anything you guys are doing, I'm a phone call away, man.
Absolutely. Hey, Fish, how do people find you? I mean, do you have any kind of social media? If anybody wanted to follow you, see what you're doing?
No, I don't really have any social media going on right now. I just retired, so of course I got to get all that stuff turned on now from many years of not having it. But yeah, right now I'm just I'm working for a nonprofit and working for the Care Coalition at SOCOM. So I'm just kind of doing that right now.
Oh, good. That's good stuff. I may call you after this then. No, I'm joking.
Absolutely. You need some help? I got you.
That's right. Nick, where do people find you? I mean, I know that we have all your stuff, but I mean, just go ahead and talk to the people.
Yeah, it's easy enough. You can usually find it just Nick J. Freitas. That's kind of like all of our social medias at Nick J. Freitas, and we have our podcast called Making the Argument. So those are two pretty good areas to follow me.
Okay. And are you staying on? Did I hear that correctly? Are you going for another term in the delegate as a delegate?
I announced this year I was not running for re-election. So 10 years in elected of office was plenty. But no, Tina and I really prayed a lot about this. First of all, we prayed for two things. It was like, God, give us clarity on what we should be doing next, because everything we were doing on the social media side and with we're doing a lot of campus stuff now with Young America's Foundation. We're doing a lot of stuff with fraternities, talking about biblical masculinity, a lot of stuff with the homeschool community and things of that nature. And so it got to the point where we were traveling so much. I was like, all right, God, I got constituents to take care of. What do you want me to give up? And he brought along someone who was excellent to replace me in the General Assembly, Karen Hamilton. We're really excited about her. So
oh, right, yeah.
I will no longer be in elected office, and it was an honor, and I am thrilled to be leaving.
Cool. All right, fellas. Well, thanks so much for being here with me. I love you both. Fish will connect, and Nick, bro, it's always good to see you. It's always good to have you. And I knew it just hit me yesterday. It's like, dude, you cannot have Nick on without Fish, especially if you're talking about suicide and all this stuff, man. So thank you both for joining the Life Transform podcast. I love you both so much.
All right.
Thank you,
love
brother.
you, brother. Yep.
Love you, man.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.
All right.
Well, friends, you heard it. 3 Green Berets together talking about life, talking about trauma, talking about deployments, talking about after the military. And you know what it all came down to? Jesus. Jesus is the way. And so, friends, stick around. There's going to be more. There's going to be more coming from a Life Transform podcast. More with Nick Freitas. We'll be doing more with him. He's a good friend of mine. And man, go ahead and follow Nick at Making the Argument. He is the man. Until next time, I'm John Arroyo. I'll see you then.